It is both. It is it is specifically personal with Jesus. I have a personal relationship with Jesus, and that's not just evangelical jargon. I have his ear at the throne.
Yeah.
I have direct connection to him, right? I don't have to go through my mother, right? But my mother is the one whom I'm to honor, right? The church is the one who I'm to honor, to receive the sacraments from, until I can receive the actual body and blood of Christ in an embrace, in the future sometime, right?
This is Burnt Marshwiggle, hosted by Joshua David Ling and Alexander Robertson. A long-form podcast about metaphysics and swampy stuff. Whenever the heck they want to make one. Here on the Poets at War Creative Network.
I'm a burnt Marshwiggle, but my spirit's lit. Realities are real, but I won't quit. Imagine the real, I choose what I feel. Donnie in my heart, that's the realest deal.
In the terminology that I use. But the way that I hear people talking about Jordan's Regeneration essay is against the way that Jordan introduces the essay. Because he introduces it by saying, this is not meant to be the final word. I'm not trying to have this be the final word. I'm just introducing some thoughts and pointing out some problems that I see with traditional Westminsterian theology. This needs to have further discussion. The problem comes in that the Westminsterians then said, you're a heretic, we don't discuss with heretics.
Right, yeah.
And I'm sorry, I thought that was the entire point of theology. I thought that the entire point of having theological debates is, okay, this is a safe zone. Heresy doesn't exist here.
Right.
So long as it doesn't get outside of this.
Right.
So long as we fix
also
this
so long as you
talking.
aren't holding on to anything that we're talking about here, basically.
Exactly.
Right.
Like that's what I've tried to explain to Zach, and that should not be doing that. What the heck are you doing, Mac?
That's right. It was Zach that was telling you to read this and blah blah blah. Yeah. Talking with him is fun.
Scott.
No, Scott. Excuse me, Scott. I got him confused. Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
No.
Yeah. Scott
Scott's,
you to do it.
Zach is the Baptist. Zach is the primitive Baptist.
Yeah.
And whenever he was like starting to get into theology before he got into college and started only doing college stuff, we were talking about theology, and he's like, okay, this might be heresy. And I said, okay, I'm going to stop you right there. It's not bad to go out on the skinny branches in your theological discussion.
Right.
It's not that heresy doesn't exist here, but don't be worried that you're espousing heresy. Otherwise, we're never going to have a productive discussion.
Right.
Because
it's when you're holding to heresy that you're a heretic.
Exactly. Yes. If you say something and we figure out later, oh, well, that's actually heresy is defined by X council, then we get to start discussing and say, okay, is the council wrong? Or are we reading the scripture wrong?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And generally speaking, you're reading the scripture wrong.
Right. Or there is a semantic issue with the creed.
Exactly, yes.
Which is exactly what the issue is regarding the Second Council of Nicaea, which you should read sometime in as close to its original language as you can. I mean, specifically on icons, what they wrote on icons. Okay. Because their on icons basically comes down to definitionally they define an icon as anything that is a pictorial representation of divinity or of figures within the Bible. And they break it down into those two categories, if I remember correctly. And basically it comes down to, if you're not worshiping the object that is the picture, then you're not committing the crime of the second commandment. And so like it really does come down to that. But they use the words icons, and so everyone gets all crazy, right? They use words like icons and veneration, and so Protestants just refuse to deal with it because we have semantic meaning attached to those words from the Middle Ages, you know, which was way after the Second Council. And so we just kind of throw it out or don't talk about it. And it's literally like 95% of the same guys that gave us the First Council of Nicaea, and we just like get that over there. Mm-hmm. That's for the Catholics.
Were they at the same time?
They were very close, if I remember correctly.
I thought Second Nicaea happened like 150 years after First.
Maybe I'm wrong, but hold on. Second Council of Nicaea, 787.
Oh yeah, that's way after. That's like 400 years after.
Okay, fair enough, but it's still pre-real actual Middle Ages. Let's see here.
Because the Middle Ages are generally defined as what, like 986 to 14.
So, to quote Wikipedia, just for the sake of interest, the council determined that the honorary veneration, temectike proskinesis, of icons was permitted, and that the true adoration, alethine latria, was reserved for God alone. It further stated that the honor paid to the icon eventually passes over to the individual that it represents. Thus, veneration of an icon could not be idolatrous, as the iconoclasts believed. The iconodule position was not justified by Christological arguments, as in the Council of Hieria. Rather, the antiquity of iconodulia and the incarnation of Christ, which was said to make acceptable the depiction of Christ, were emphasized.
Interesting.
Yep. Like I said, you should read it and like actually like pay attention to the Greek as best as you can. And I think you'll be like, yeah, this is basic, like this is a basic position that like against the 2CV, like, you know, like it's a really basic anti Covenanter Westminsterian 2CV thing, right? So
yeah.
What you got?
I feel like this is right where y'all start to lose me.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, now we got echoes. Is that you? Is that you?
Might be.
I'm not getting an echo.
I was. Oh, I know why.
Testing.
It's sharing my screen for some reason. I didn't mean to share my screen.
Wait, is sharing your screen? One sec.
At least it is for me. How did you share my screen?
There we are. One sec.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep. Let me stop streaming. Try this again. Make selection. Clear this window. There we are. Is that sharing the right window?
Check 1, 2.
Why is the camera not working? There we are.
There it goes. Okay. All right, we're good. That works. Let me get it to here. Yeah, that'll work. Cool. So, Daniel, how are you doing? You almost there?
Just about. I got one more client session to do, but it's a weird one where like I just basically just summarize that we did this thing, he did this, and then it's an easy one to do, so I'm fine.
Okay, so you want to just start the show?
Sure, I can. I'm just curious what y'all were just talking about there, because my brain was not kicked into gear yet.
Lots of things.
Yeah, discussing various elements of archaeology.
Gotcha.
Including but not limited to Jordan's Regeneration essay and Iconoclast Controversies.
I really need to study up on all of that, because that is right where y'all start to lose me. It's just, I got nothing to contribute there yet.
Well, I'm in the middle of reading Jordan's Regeneration essay. So if you want to jump on sometime, I'm sure that I can schedule a time that we can just read through it together and see if we can make any sense of it.
Sure. I need to start from.
He needs to be able to understand Nate Wilson first.
Basically, I wasn't.
Oh, that's fair.
Well, no. Okay, hold up. It's just the Canon Plus app isn't always great, and the documentaries on it are not always good format, because I tried to watch a audio book documentary thing, and I just felt like I got hit by like an overload of just light and sound, and I felt like I got flashbanged. I couldn't make sense of it.
What did you watch? Was the opening of Tilt-A-Whirl?
Yeah, but like the audio wasn't
Sense.
working. The audio wasn't working. The picture quality wasn't what I needed. There was no captions.
Huh. Weird.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get it figured out one way or another. So.
Okay.
And basically my knowledge of the Reformation is seriously lacking, as I basically was like, it was the forbidden tree. Like, I was allowed to explore everything in my dad's library, but that was like that was the tree of knowledge of good and evil for him. So.
Well, I can give you the history lesson.
If the tree of knowledge of good and evil for you is the Reformation, you might be a heretic.
Exactly. Exactly. That's like the whole thing that I came into. It was like, that's the world I was born into. So I kind of give myself a little grace for having to catch up a little bit.
Well, we could.
Give yourself all the grace you need, man.
To be fair, it's not too late to change this to Burnt Marshwiggle and give him a Reformation history lesson.
Honestly,
I'm not opposed to this, because I'm far more free to like move around and go back to the house and do Burnt Marshwiggle. I do want to actually discuss some of this stuff because I need some. I need to clear some stuff with you guys again as far as the homeschool Harry Potter goes. But if we wanted to keep that to the first 15 minutes and cut that as like a mini episode of Poetry Boot Camp, I'm good to switch the rest over to a Burnt Marshwiggle.
I'm literally down for anything. And if y'all want to educate me and school me a little bit on some of the stuff that I'm lacking, that'd be great. Like, I know the story of Martin Luther, but as soon as y'all start talking about the different councils and aspects of high theology,
yeah, that's old. That's the early church. So let me do a very broad scattershot. And Alex, you can fill in as need be, but basically give you a very broad scattershot from the apostles to today. Okay. Basically, the basic general gist of Christians being fed to the lions in various places and that sort of a thing, correct? They taught you that in Sunday school, at least, right? Daniel, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. There was a technical error with some work stuff. I gotta just send a message that is full of technical jargon. Give me just a sec.
Do what you got to do. And Alex, we could jump back to
homeschool Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Okay. So go.
No, talk about whatever. This is a mixture of a show. It's fine. Mostly Burnt Marshwiggle though.
Yeah. So like we can discuss this later. I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm good to write all this stuff down, because I'm trying to write stuff in a, like, this document that everybody is seeing right now is a is like our show document so that it's big enough text that everybody can see it. I'm trying to organize it all into a more like readable document. And that's what I'm having. That's what I need to check with you guys with. So I have short biographies of all the ruts that I'm working on. Was talking with Debbie as I was making this, and she thought that Zell needed a longer name than just Zelle. And the one that we came up with is Zelliana.
I like it.
Okay, cool, great. And then the short bio that I came up with her is generally carrying the mild manner and practical mind of her mother. Most would never guess that Zell got all the word count from the Ahaziah lost. With a tongue sharper than the one of her brother's blades, Zell is a force to be reckoned with when someone crosses her, or her family, or anyone she loves, or likes, or agrees with.
Say that last part again.
With a tongue sharper than one of her brother's blades, Zell is a force to be reckoned with when someone crosses her, or her family, or anyone she loves, or likes, or agrees with.
Okay. So she's super sassy girl.
Yes, which is what we had discussed. I just wanted to make sure that that was correct.
Yeah, that seems correct to me.
Works. It works, okay. But it's just kind of like, oh, goodness. It works functionally. And I feel like I understand the tone it's trying to convey of like sass and funny and humorous. But I feel like it doesn't play with the words enough. I don't know how to explain
what words. What words?
Yeah.
My mind
her
is
name.
in two different places still. Give me a
just
sec.
Just pause, do your thing. Pause to do your thing. Just mute and we'll go from there. Yeah. For right now, that's fine. We can change it later if need be, Alex.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
We can move over to a burnt Marshwiggle, and I'll just work on writing stuff.
Oh, we're already burnt Marshwiggle. It's fine.
Okay then.
So okay, I'm gonna give him the history lesson when he gets back. But let's see. This essay is like the big thing you're turning over and over, right? At the moment.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out like what he's saying, where I agree with it, where I disagree with it, and how to like. I honestly want to do the thing that nobody has done, which is actually interact with it. Now, I'm not the right person to do that because I'm freaking not a theologian. I've never been to seminary.
Right.
I don't have the knowledge that I think he. I'm not the target audience for his paper. And so
right.
I feel like I'm not super qualified to interact with it. But I've also not seen anybody else interact with it, and I'm dealing with people who are using this as like the measuring stick of whether or not they listen to you. And I feel like that's the wrong thing to do by the entire paper.
So
it starts off with one sec. I printed out the paper so that I could actually take physical notes on it. But like the opening section of it says the purpose of this paper is twofold. First, I hope to dissolve some of the perceived problems with the new ideas. Blah 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 blah. Okay, second paragraph, about halfway through. I've not been able to resolve all the difficulties with my thesis. But there are enough problems with the traditional view that I believe this matter should be opened up for discussion. This paper is some tentative explorations and should be read as such. It is an invitation to converse, not an attempt to settle every detail.
Mm-hmm.
I hear people on the like extreme oatmeal stout side who are talking about this, and they're using this paper as the barometer for like, oh no, anyone who is disagreeing with this is like don't listen to them for theology type stuff.
Right.
That's the paper says not to read it like that.
Right. So, there is that point to interact with. I've definitely read this before, but it's been a while. What I came away with was basically there's a hope in a lot of the high church camp, the oatmeal stout camp, that wants a deeper, and I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I'm like a lot of people do in the Westminster camps. They're looking for a deeper understanding of the nature of yes, regeneration, but I think it goes further into justification and sanctification in both directions, right? They want a deeper understanding, connection, not so much not so much systematic, but more of a, they want to show how things can appear to be not random, but how accounting for man, they want to place a further emphasis on man's sin and depravity being the main thing that messes things up as far as regeneration goes. And they want there to be a real, objective, tangible, in-person, non-subjective, story based, like me giving you a story, justification for one's regeneration, right? And so that's what I took away from it. And I think that there is more to be said for sure than what the Westminster Fathers said when it comes to regeneration. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a lot more in regard to his story and the characters that he makes, and us on the level of anthropos, of man, and God as creator, and the very interesting weaving he does with the God man. There's a lot there. Mm-hmm. But I think generally speaking, when you start to look at regeneration the way he is doing, it's barking up the wrong tree. It's not that it's so far out there it's heretical, because it is all theoretical and blah blah blah. Yeah. But it is barking up the wrong tree, is what I'm trying to say. So it's hard for me to interact with someone who's barking up the wrong tree, because it feels like all I can say is, well, I disagree with that, and I think you need to go back this way. But I also agree with his thinking and hoping that this is a rich area that we haven't dug deep enough into.
Yeah.
I think that's actually admirable.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't find a place where I can go, okay, you're barking up the right tree there. Let's talk about that and where you're wrong. Do you see what I'm saying? It's all just wrong tree to me. And so I have a hard time interacting with it, because I can't find anything where he's on the right tree, specifically. Not that he's way out in Nowhereville, but yeah, go ahead.
I think that he might have a point with his like reading the 5 points in an ecclesiastical direction. Like that's super interesting to me. Like
Okay,
very,
remind
very,
me.
very interesting to me.
Like I said, it's been a
So
while since I read
this
it,
is
but
this is page 3 for anyone reading along at home. Um, says I'm going to start up 2 paragraphs. Just so, Calvinists have a tendency to read every passage about election in terms of the 5 points, and often this is not obviously correct. Elect simply means choose. God elected David to be king. God elects people into his church, but not all those elected into the church are elected to persevere, elected to heaven. We have to look at each passage to see what it says. Even if no passage in the Bible ever speaks directly about those elected to heaven, the doctrine is secure. I think at least Matthew 24, and 31 use chosen ones for those who go to heaven, who are protected and harvested by the angels. Without taking anything away from the Synod of Dort, we can read the 5 points in an ecclesiastical way. 1, not the paper, but me, total depravity. All men are totally estranged from God. 2, unconditional election. God sovereignly, before the foundation of the world, has unconditionally elected some people to be baptized into his church. So, like he starts off the paper by saying, "What we need, the only things that you need to proof text predestination, as the Calvinists believe, are Genesis 1:1 and what's the other passage? Yeah, Genesis 1:1 and 1 verse in Revelation. Da-da-da. Yeah, no, and Jesus' statement to the penitent thief on the cross. Even if the
mm-hmm.
Bible nowhere says anything further about it, that's enough to prove predestination.
Mm-hmm.
So at first he's concerned with nothing in this paper is denying predestination, because that obviously happens even
Right.
from there.
Right.
So he's saying, read the 5 points in an ecclesiastical way. All men are totally estranged from God. 2, God sovereignly, before the foundation of the world, has unconditionally elected some people to be baptized into his church.
Mm-hmm.
3, limited atonement. Jesus' atoning work is truly given to such people in a special way, a way that goes beyond the general benefits of the atonement that are given to all men while they live in this present world, which is what John 3:16 is getting at. For God so loved the
Right.
world that he sent his one and only Son to redeem the world. So far, I understand this. Such people are irresistibly drawn into the church. This would be irresistible grace. Some people are irresistibly drawn into the church. Consider a squalling infant who is being baptized. He can fight all he wants, but the grace, baptism as a means of grace, according to Reformed theology, is irresistibly given to him. 5, thus, those thus elected into the church are set on a road to heaven, and some will persevere because God continues to work with them until the end.
Right.
I think that makes sense. Like that is working out baptismal regeneration in a thoroughly reformed way. This would like anger the Lutherans and the Romans in, I think, exactly the right way. I think he's on to something there. I think that's barking up the right tree.
Where yeah.
I'm just trying to dig through it, because I can't understand what's barking up the right tree, what is completely aside the point, and what is like just flat out wrong. Because once again, I just started reading this. I've listened to it like twice on audio, and I'm just starting to like work through it on the page itself so that I can actually see what he's doing.
Yeah. When it comes to the ecclesiastical side of things, like reading that in that sense, I feel like that's a duh. But it's a duh that, and of course he acknowledges all caveats when it comes to other ways this sort of thing happens. But speaking of it generally, like, yeah, of course it's going to happen within the course of the church. That's kind of the point. I feel like
Yeah.
that's all groundwork and sort of a duh. There's certain things that he does that are like groundwork does for me.
Yeah.
More than barking up the right tree, as you're putting it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
see how that specifically leads to it in any way to a I feel like it's this. They're wanting to say the regular way in which people are brought before the throne of God is the church. They are introduced to the king by the church, generally speaking, right? What I feel like the other side of the coin that is overemphasized by Baptists and some Westminsterians is the fact that becomes, after you're introduced, a personal relationship with Jesus. That doesn't supersede your being introduced by the church. The church, going back to Calvin, is the loving mother, right? It's the bride of Christ. So in a sense, the church is our mother, right? Like there is a sense in which that is true. So in regard to that, of course, we have a wonderful relationship with our mother. She introduced us to Christ. And by her interceding, as far as, prayer and supplication, nothing more than that, we and the administration of the sacraments, rightly, given by Christ as her thing to give, right? We're introduced to Christ. But that's not the extent of the relationship. Our relationship to Christ is not unconnected to our mother, right? To the church, but it is also separate. It is both. It is specifically personal with Jesus. I have a personal relationship with Jesus, and that's not just evangelical jargon. I have his ear at the throne.
Yeah.
I have direct connection to him, right? I don't have to go through my mother, right? But my mother is the one whom I'm to honor, right? The church is the one who I'm to honor, to receive the sacraments from, until I can receive the actual body and blood of Christ in an embrace, in the future sometime, right? And so there are some senses in which the church intercedes for us, right? By prayer, supplication, the sacraments, etc. But those things are not Christ, right? And I'm not saying that my relationship with Christ supersedes Christ, because he has given me the church. The church is part of my relationship to Christ, because he said, these are the ones, this is how you are getting me until I can have my actual physical audience with you, where I can embrace you personally. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think we're trying to in Jordan's essay, we're trying to extra emphasize the church because we have de-emphasized it so much through evangelicalism. And evangelical creep into the Westminster circles, right? And I think that's noble in one sense, but in another, I have to go, right. But, since we're on the show, I can actually pull it up and say it instead of just referencing it to you. But there's a line in The Sands of Time Are Sinking, which you love. It's one of the first poems that's lengthy that I ever read to you. I don't know if you've read it any time recently, but I remember one of our first times really staying up late. You absolutely adored it. Let me find it here. Often, it's my favorite verse. I just wanted to make sure. Oft in yon sea-beat prison, the Lord and I held tryst. It's actually tryst, but they wanted it to rhyme with Christ. The Lord and I held tryst, for Anwath was not heaven. Anwath, the place that this person's talking about in the poem. It's like my hometown, for those who are listening. For Anwath was not heaven, and preaching was not Christ. That line right there, right? It says, and I, my murkiest storm cloud, was by a rainbow spanned, caught from the glory dwelling in Emmanuel's land. So the point of that, go ahead.
And I think that Jordan and the other oatmeal stout guys would agree with that.
Yes.
However, I think that they would say preaching is not Christ, but the sacrament is.
And that's where I might disagree.
Interesting.
I believe that it is the real presence of Christ. I believe he is really there spiritually, but he is not there for me to hug.
But he is there for you to eat.
Spiritually. I hold to Calvin's spiritual real presence, which is different from memorialism. I believe that he really, truly, through the power of the Holy Spirit, enters our very being and spiritually changes us, which fuels us in a physical way. We go from the inside to the outside. What comes out of a man defiles him, right? Or justifies him in this case, right? So the point is, I believe by eating and taking the sacrament, there is a real spiritual reawakening and a re-quickening every single time you rightly take the sacrament. I do believe that, right? And it is a real thing that has real effect in the real world, but it is not of a physical nature until it's coming out of your fingertips, right? That's the difference. So this might be a trans or consubstantiation thing versus Calvin's real presence, right? Which is not pure memorialism. That's a whole other thing.
I'm moving over to my phone.
You're good. Not a problem.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
If we get Daniel on, that's cool. If he's too busy, that's okay. We've recorded a burnt Marshwiggle, and we'll get to Poetry Bricks as soon as we can. No big deal.
Yeah. Okay. So, correct me if I'm wrong on what Calvin's position is. I'm going to go grab my copy of the Institutes and then head to Mom and Dad's. And then we can continue this conversation there. We'll continue it as we're talking, but I just want to be over there.
Sure.
So correct me if I'm wrong on Calvin's view of the sacrament, but his spiritual presence is saying that Christ is in the Lord's Day service. We are raised up to heavenly places spiritually with Christ, and in the spiritual place where we are raised up, Christ is there. And the way that touches down to us physically is in the sacrament. That is the Lord's body and the Lord's blood in the spiritual realm where we exist during the Lord's Day service. Is that correct?
More or less, yeah.
Okay. Then I wouldn't have a problem. I don't have a problem saying that is actually Christ there with us. Like I'm not going to claim that I've like experienced.
I'm not denying that.
Like that's what I was saying at the first. The preaching is not Christ. The preaching is Christ's word, Christ's will to us. But the sacrament is. It is really Christ. It is actually Christ there with us because he is spiritually present there with us, and the spiritual is just as real as the physical.
Yes.
I don't know where we're talking past each other.
Okay. In this sense, I am experiencing Christ in a real spiritual realm. I'd say that talking about the... Okay. I'm having to retrace back and tie it back into a few things.
Yeah.
When we get to... Okay, let's back up. So I was talking before we got to here, about emphasizing the church's importance because of in actual justification, salvation of various sorts, right? Okay. in that way, I still have a separate relationship with Jesus than I do with the church.
Yes.
Right? But they are one flesh, so to speak. Hold on.
Yeah.
In that they are married. So there is a both going on, just like we have is and not is in the Trinity. Okay. We've got is and
Yes.
is not, right? So the church is not Christ, and the church is Christ in that one flesh with the Son, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in the you really have to hold both of those, is my point, in order to have any right understanding of the church's place in salvation. And I'm saying that I think Jordan's essay speaks in a way, regardless of whether this was his intention, speaks in a way that is essentially within the problem, within the parentheses that he's making this argument. And not saying he's a heretic, not doing any of that. It comes out as essentially being, because the normative way of being introduced to the king is through his bride, that you must come through the bride because the bride is the narrow gate. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
And so the bride is, I would argue the bride's not the narrow gate. The narrow gate is actually it's the narrow gate of trying to walk the line and emulate Jesus in your life as a faithfulness to him. It's the perseverance of the saints, right?
Soldiers, lower your swords. We're taking a brief respite to engage in commercial maneuvers. Attention all creative forces. The Poets at War Creative Network is calling you to the front lines of faith and artistry. From our command post, we're broadcasting a different strategic operation each week. The General's Report, poetic essays from the trenches of Christian creativity. Creators and Crusaders, interrogating the finest minds on the artistic battlefield. Poetry Bootcamp, forging the weapons of modern epic verse. The Broodcast, our covert gathering of literary commandos. And stand by for special deployments, Burnt Marshwiggle, navigating the theological quagmire. And Jubal's Wardrobe, sonic and visual artillery direct from HQ. The war of ideas rages on, and we need every creative mind on deck. Tune in every Friday to join our ranks. Your orders are as following. Be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you in the trenches on the Poets at War Creative Network.
Hello, I'm Sarah Levesque, Editor-in-Chief of Logo Sophia magazine. I would like to invite you to explore our Pilgrim's Journal of Life, Love, and Literature, both in visual format and in podcast format. Our goal is to help bridge the gaps between different Christian denominations and traditions. Please visit our website at logosophiamag.com to read or listen to stories, articles, poetry, and more, all for free. We look forward to journeying with you.
Citizens of the free world, sound the alarm! This is your cultural dispatch from the front lines of creativity. General Joshua David Ling and his valiant Poets at War are locked in an epic struggle against the unholy trinity of artistic oppression. First, we face the insidious forces of boredom, turning free minds into enslaved masses. Second, the creeping plague of mediocrity, shackling storytellers with the chains of the mundane. And finally, lurking behind it all, the ultimate adversary, Satan himself, weaponizing tedium to ensnare the world in sin and sloth. But fear not, our band of bards stands ready, armed in the military styling of Tolkien and Lewis to combat the axis of ennui. Introducing Be the Bard, one important way to support the ongoing efforts of your Poets at War. Your support keeps the Poets at War Creative Network, a bastion of artistic freedom, accessible to all. From epic poetry to stirring stories, we are crafting art that shatters the shackles of the humdrum. Though our fellowship may be small, our art strikes with the force of Anduril itself. Every coin you contribute arms our volunteers with provisions to keep their artillery aimed at the enemy and encouraging your hearts. Remember, we're fighting for the tales that truly matter. Stories that awaken the soul and kindle the imagination. By supporting Feed the Bard, you're not merely helping General Ling. You're joining a quest to reclaim the realms of Christian artistry with unmatched style and substance. So take up arms, brave patrons. Feed the Bard today, and let us vanquish the forces of dullness with the combined powers of truth, beauty, and goodness. To support, please visit joshuadavidling.com/feedthebard. Feed the Bard, tuppence a bag. Soldiers, replenish your creative ammunition. We've emerged victorious from the commercial onslaught, ready to continue our noble crusade on Poets at War.
And the only one who can keep you on that narrow path is Christ himself, right? And
okay, can you run that by me again? I'm not sure if I'm picking up exactly what you're saying.
Okay, back up to what point?
The perseverance of the saints. Like, what is the perseverance of the saints here?
The perseverance of the saints is that narrow gate. I believe that's what is being spoken of. Living a faithful life for Christ because you've been called to live a faithful life following after Christ, albeit imperfectly. And the only one who can get you through that narrow gate is Christ himself by the power of the Holy Spirit.
As opposed to what you're saying that he's saying, which is that the narrow gate is the church, and the church, like the church carries you through the perseverance.
Right.
Like the church, you persevere through your connection with the church.
Right. Your perseverance is through your mother, not your father, not your brother, whatever you want to call it. Jesus. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
This is where I think the de-emphasizing of the personal relationship with Jesus causes problems, because it's not focusing on Jesus, it's focusing on the church. Both are important. There is not there is a major problem with the de-emphasis of the importance of the church. I'm not going against that in any way, shape, or form, right? But the whole point of the Reformation, in many ways, was God of song said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful heart shall praise thee.
It was Martin Luther standing against it was Martin Luther pulling in Athanasius and saying, I'm standing against the world. I can do no other, God help me.
Exactly. And
the world at that point in time being the church.
Right. Exactly. So I'm saying that faithfulness in life is not always lived out within the church, as in the physical body of Christ, the physical in-person incarnate, your neighbor body of Christ. It's not always. There are times where you have to fight against it and work outside it and around it because it is not being Christ at this point in time. The marriage supper of the Lamb is not consummated yet. Yet she has authority given to her directly by Christ, and we must obey as far as we possibly can, but we cannot disobey our Father in heaven. So when bringing up, rightly so, as far as the nobility of the sentiment goes, how important the church is, how important the sacraments are, how important all these things are. What's more important, ultimately, is were you faithful to Christ, not were you faithful to the church.
Okay. Okay. N- mm, no, no Protestant would disagree with that, correct?
Right.
Like,
Right. I don't think they would
Jordan,
either.
Jordan wouldn't disagree with that. Lightheart wouldn't disagree with
No.
that. None of the almost
No.
out dudes are going to disagree with that.
Agreed. Yeah, yeah.
So where is it getting lost? Like where is?
Well,
I
okay,
don't.
so what is the call for application in this essay, if anything? Just to
I don't
think
think
and
there.
talk?
To as far as I can find in the essay, there isn't
Mhm.
a call for application. That's one of the things that's losing me about it. Is that
Right.
it
Right.
seems like this is theology that
Mhm.
if it's accepted, it solves the Baptist Presbyterian divide.
Mhm.
Like that's where the application is, because you can't hold FE and be a Baptist. Like
Right.
it's literally not possible.
Right.
It actually truly solves the Baptist Presbyterian divide. You can't be Credo Baptist and hold to this, because it is a strong belief
Solving
in
by driving
baptismal
a complete and
regeneration.
total wedge between the two.
Exactly. Like and that might be what needs to be done. Like that might be once again, like Brendan putting the
I actually
like
think
putting
proper
Baptist.
exegesis of Hebrews will solve our problem, and a proper exegesis of Jeremiah 31, but that's a whole other thing.
I've started feeling unwell. I'm probably need to
Dude,
call.
go
Yeah.
rock
Okay.
and roll,
Go to bed, man.
relax. If you can't do next Tuesday, we'll talk about another day. We'll figure it out. You go to bed,
Yeah.
you relax and get to sleep, man. We love you.
Yeah.
Love you,
Man.
man.
Now I'm coughing up a bunch, and I gotta go.
Yeah,
Okay.
hang in there,
Talk
man.
to you later.
All right. Back to what we were doing. So,
I like
okay.
nobody's gonna disagree with that.
Right.
So how do we? It is what needs to happen. Like new Presbyterians need to basically say the Baptists are heretics.
Mm-hmm.
The Baptists are heretics, and therefore we need to get broader with our acceptance of heresy and working together. Like what is what actually needs to happen here? We accept definitionally, like thoughts on regeneration similar to this. Obviously we still need to work stuff out, because that's what the paper calls for, but do we accept definitionally this, solve the Baptist Presbyterian divide by saying the Baptists are heretics, and then say we can work with some level of heretic. Like they're not theological heretics, they're not Christological heretics. They are
hermeneutical heretics.
They are ecclesiological heretics.
Hermeneutical. They're really actually hermeneutical heretics.
Okay.
I really seriously
would
go ahead.
Go. No, go.
I really think the core of the issue between the Baptists is not the nature of the church. I really don't.
Okay.
I don't even think it's necessarily ecclesiology. What I think the core of the issue is understanding the how do I put this? It is understanding the point of what Hebrews means by a new and better covenant.
Okay.
The Baptists say that it is a qualitative difference, even though the vast majority of passages in Scripture speaking of the better nature, and especially in Hebrews, but everywhere in Scripture, are actually more so speaking of the quantitative differences. And that is not something that Baptists like to talk about very much. There is a qualitative difference in that we have the substance of what was hoped for in the person of Christ, seated at the right hand of the Father. But that's really the main qualitative difference. Hold on, let me roll through this real quick. The quantitative difference is passages such as neither Greek nor Jew, neither slave nor free, neither male nor female. Literally every part of the covenant is actually made to open up wider to the kinds of people who can come into it. It has, in the proper use of the term, liberalized as far as Christ has allowed through his teaching. And that is why he doubled down and emphasized things like, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And he emphasized those things even over and above the other things, while the other things didn't pass away, right? The point is, he refocused everything, and as a result, us following him, us trusting in his sanctification alone for our salvation, and yes, going to church, following the teachings of the apostles through to the apostolic ministers, right? The whole point of all of this is we can trust him for our salvation. And now everything we're doing out of that is just praise. Baptists see the better, and I'm sure you at some point held to this, or you at least were taught it, that the qualitative difference is everyone really truly believes, except Baptists don't actually believe that either. They mean, generally speaking, it is of a purer covenant where everyone believes better. Everyone has better ideas about who Christ is. Everyone is smarter about everything than the old covenant. It's really just taking the mappings of secular idea of modernist bias, where moderns are so much smarter than the people who came before them, and mapping that onto the old and new covenant. Right. And I think that is the main issue here, not ecclesiology. I think Baptists who have a Presbyterian form of government are literally just not serving the sacrament to certain people that they should be, and that's their only problem. That's why I'm so loose with Reformed Baptists, right? The real underlying presuppositional problem is the nature of the new covenant versus the old covenant.
Yes. So, yes.
Which
Absolutely.
is why I think barking up the ecclesiology tree is a no mas. No bueno.
Okay. So what you're saying is that Reformed Baptists, their only problem is that they are Reformed Baptists' only problem is that they are not giving. They're not giving the sacraments to the people. They're refusing the sacraments to people whom they should not refuse them. To whom they should not refuse them.
Yes,
that's their issue.
But let me be clear: 1689 Presbyterian ecclesiology.
1689 doesn't have Presbyterian ecclesiology, though. It's officially congregational, right? It's congregational with eldership.
There are well, you say that. There are some that specifically seek, apology is one of them, to create associations for higher appeals, and that sort of a thing. I'm saying, regardless of how they frame it, the function of an elder who is voted on by the congregation is not Congregationalist, even if they vote on a whole bunch of extra stuff. That's Presbyterian.
Okay.
If you have elders, if you have a session, no matter what you call it, that is functionally a either independent Presbyterian church, which yes, they do exist, or a Presbyterian church with a looser confederation on higher courts.
Okay. So
I'm saying they're closer to being us than we even realize. The issue is the nature of the covenants. It's always been the nature of the covenants.
Yes. Even James White would agree with this.
Yes, he would. And he would debate me on it. And I'm not saying I would win. I don't have the acumen to back it up with sources. That's my issue, right? But as far as airtight logic, I can tell that story up one side and down the other, and you can't prove it wrong, even by scripture, because it's not what the scripture says.
Okay. So you're saying that the issue is the understanding of the nature of the covenant.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what the Oatmeal Stout Guide would say is that the issue is the definition of regeneration.
I don't see that at all. I think we both have the I think that he's saying, okay, so the Oatmeal Stout Guy in this case being James Jordan is basically saying regeneration, I think we've been thinking about this wrong. And I would say okay, this is another thing. So there's a lot of cope with Reformed Baptist history.
Yes.
There are realistically
there's a lot of cope in Baptist history, not even just Reformed Baptists.
Right. But there are three.
This is a Baptist problem.
There are three major lines historically that you can trace here for culture and tradition. One is the Anabaptists who became Baptists, who became Reformed Baptists because the Baptists were liberalizing. The next is the
can you repeat that? Sorry, I just walked into the house.
It's okay. First is the Anabaptists who became Baptists, who became Reformed Baptists because the Baptists liberalized.
Oh,
that's the first one. That's the first one. Okay? Historically. Then we have
Hello?
Are you there?
Can you repeat all of that? I just walked into the house.
Not a problem. I'll do it again.
Wi-Fi died.
Not a problem. I'll do it again. We good?
Yeah.
Okay. The first line historically we have are the Anabaptists who became Baptists, who became Reformed Baptists because the Baptists liberalized. Okay.
Okay. So this would be this would be your these would be your Anabaptists that came over to America, founded the SBC, and then the SBC liberalized.
Doesn't have to be SBC. It can be independent. It can be independent fundamental. I'm talking broad strokes here. Okay. So we have,
got it.
Yeah. We have that line. Then we have the line which were essentially the first actual Reformed Baptists, which drew up the 1689, who were a very, very, very small group during the Reformation in England. That through that line you get to Charles Spurgeon, and then further from there.
And this starts with guys like Fritz Erba,
Benjamin Keach, etc. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, you have those two groups, and then you have a third group, which is people who were whatever in a more modern sense, and came to it because it made the most sense to them scripturally.
Yes.
That's kind of
And
what
that
you
and
have
that
as,
and that's going to be your like Jeff Durbin's, your James White's.
right. So that is the
Okay.
majority of Reformed Baptists today. There's very little actual covenant kids from the other two lines, the way we would call it, covenant kids, right? And so with those three lines, you've got a certain group of you've got this interesting melting pot where Presbyterians are a melting pot in another way, but we all agreed, excuse me, on a lot of the basics. Oh, look, it's Jesse.
Hey, Jesse.
Tis
Hello, sir.
indeed.
We
Start
are
off
recording,
well.
just so you're aware, we are recording for Burnt Marshwiggle. So no big
Oh,
deal. You
wonderful.
can be here. We're just talking
Oh,
about
no.
James Jordan's regeneration thing. But yeah, talk to me. What's up?
No, just popping in for a moment. It's not often I have 2 evenings in a row. There.
Oh my
Spare
goodness,
second.
what is happening?
Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
Good to see you, my friend. So,
Well,
no, we were saying that you having 2 nights in a row. We were reacting to that.
he said dogs and cats living together, and I got really confused. I don't know.
That's
that.
a quote from a movie. It's a quote from a movie. Anyway.
It's a quote from Scrooge, isn't it?
I think that was actually quoted from another movie. I think it was a Bill Murray movie, like Stripes or something.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
But okay, so where were we? We were talking the different types of Baptists. Okay, so I'm talking with these 3 like general lines to Reformed Baptists. I really do think that the only reason we have this issue is because of the hermeneutical work of people like Benjamin Keach being wrong and held to as tradition through harsh persecution, and going against it to this day is unthinkable because of the persecution. Not really because of the hermeneutic.
Is that where you would put James White? Because he very strongly holds to the hermeneutic, but he also very clearly puts to whenever he gets to going on the dividing line, which I love to hear.
Right.
I love to hear people who are passionate about it, even if I think they're wrong.
Right.
He starts talking about this is what people were given their third baptism for in Geneva. This is what Baptists were killed for. This is what Fritz Erba died for in the tower of the castle of
Munster.
what was it? The Felix the Elector or something?
Yeah, Munster, all that stuff. Yeah, right.
Oh no, he doesn't defend Munster at all.
Okay.
The castle where Luther translated the Bible into German.
Oh yeah. Frederick
the Elector. Yeah.
So with all this, going back to like, is the covenant being the thing as opposed to the church? Really and truly, ecclesiology wise, all of the people who are now 1689 basically followed that, or a congregationalism that was far more in order, so to speak, far closer to parliamentary, so to speak, than anything, except for those Anabaptist guys that became Reformed Baptists, but they don't even know what they hold anymore. They just kind of went, 1689, cool, I'm good. Right? Yeah. So I'm saying not so much those guys, but the other two, the recently converted to 1689 and the actual, like, from Benjamin Keach out to Spurgeon out to whoever, those guys are and have always been holding to it based on the original hermeneutics of people like Benjamin Keach, and have refused to have them be questioned or talked about in any kind of way, mostly because of the persecution or because of pure traditionalism. As far as Presbyterians go, you do have people who are, recent converts to Presbyterianism, such as yourself. There are people, but there are a lot more covenant kids who actually got taught this and taught to work through this. They're not as common as they used to be, but they do exist, like me, right?
Yeah.
And every single one of them were taught to work through this almost invariably, right? There's very little like tradition holding in this regard.
Interesting. Interesting that you say that, because my experience, at least, is that there's almost no covenant kids in Presbyterianism.
Not where you're at. Yeah.
At least in my circles, because everybody I don't know of a person at my church who isn't a Baptist convert to Presbyterianism.
Yeah.
And everybody that I hear about is a Baptist convert to Presbyterianism.
But all of the
Baptist
people
convert to
converted,
Presbyterianism.
Right. But all the people who were SBC, General Baptist, that went to 1689, same thing, right? So there are a few, about Doug Wilson's kids, about some of the folks in Moscow, me, and through the grapevine, even though you don't know them, some of the people who were with Joe. There are some people in the Rushdoony camp that I'm aware of through Mark Rushdoony.
Okay.
And there are a few other small camps where there are still covenant kids that are training up their kids in the way. Bonson's kids, that's another one. Who's that?
I'll chime in here. If you know anybody, Redeemer Reformed, not Oklahoma, but what used to be called Auburn Avenue in Monroe, Louisiana. There's loads of second, third, fourth generation Christians over there, because the Regeneration has happened to be there for longer.
Right.
Okay.
So exist.
Yeah.
It's just more.
It's more of what?
Okay. So it's just the circles that I run in. That's almost all Baptist converts.
It's more of a regional thing.
Okay.
It is a regional thing.
Which makes sense because we're like 98% Wesleyan.
Well, the other thing is you got to remember, Presbyterians were not very influential in the evangelization of the rural and middle parts of America at all.
Because Presbyterians move slow.
Exactly.
That's
and
like
Baptists,
the entire benefit of the Presbyterian system.
Right. And so the independent fundamental Baptists were the big movers and shakers along with the Wesleyans. And so both of them were able to move quickly and fast because all you needed is basically a circuit rider and he could be a pastor for his whole life. Right. He finds a town, he does his thing, that boom shakalaka, you're in business. Right. And a lot of that was financial on top of, they had a mission, they had a purpose, and I'm not questioning much of them at all. Like a lot of them really did believe what they believed, and they were holding to basically, I would argue Whitfield was more influential than any of the Wesleys. I think Whitfield was the big, I think most of middle America became Whitfieldian for lack of a better term, because everyone was,
which is interesting.
Then
the Calvinistic Methodists died out.
Right.
I want to know the story behind that, because I've never heard the story behind that.
That's complicated, but a lot of them became Baptist and a lot of them liberalized to Methodist, like United Methodist kind of thing. And so it sort of just they sort of just didn't stand for anything, and then kind of just went, whatever way when the controversy showed up. And there's more to it than that, but that's a really like an oversimplification for the moment. But the main thing that I'm trying to point out is the people who are covenant kids are taught to question everything most of the time.
Yeah.
They're told, this is the best explanation we have found, and we are giving it to you. not to test in some flippant way, but to say, this is the scripture, this is the thing you hold to. Now, these are our documents. These are how they line up. Here's the teaching, right? Whereas,
and you see that with people with the oatmeal stout guys like Lightheart, who I believe was raised Lutheran.
Yeah, I think that's
and
right.
He was a covenant child who was baptized. Like he was baptized as a child, and he continued to seek. Like he continued to seek. Ended up Presbyterian.
Mm-hmm. You know, I was my people were Lutheran when we came to the United States, right? Yeah. We were Lutheran until the Civil War, and they came down to the South. And I think if they still held to any kind of faith at that point, which I'm not convinced of, they became either Methodist or IFB by default because of the region. The Presbyterians by that point had largely been pushed out of Georgia, and by the Anglicans, because the Anglican Church was the state church. And so
really, the Anglican Church was the state church of Georgia?
Yes, it was. I know, right?
Interesting.
And South Carolina was, I don't remember exactly what South Carolina, I think they were more kind of independent, do what you do. And then I know North Carolina was the Presbyterian
because I know whenever
church.
I think Anglican, I think Georgia. That's
right?
Definitely the association that I have.
Even if it's just like American Episcopal, no, we have like a few of those left, but no, it just hasn't survived.
Whenever I think Anglican, I think some guy in robes at the in front of the church.
Well, you think about this,
and may the Lord be with you.
Well, you think about this. Obviously, Georgia was more split when it comes to Cherokee territories. What we think of as North Georgia would be Standing Peachtree. The area I was more of a Creek territory. The area I am now. Go ahead.
Okay. Does the Presbyterians being pushed out of Georgia happen at the same time as the Trail of Tears? Whenever the Choctaw who were Presbyterian get pushed out.
Good question. I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm guessing
Probably.
That's what happened. I'm guessing that the Indian tribes were Presbyterian because Presbyterianism fits so well with any form of tribalism. Any form of tribal system, Presbyterian just logically clicks. Presbyterian literally grew out of the Scottish clan system and Genevan theology.
Right. So in regard to this,
I bet that's what happened.
So getting back to a little bit of James Jordan and all that kind of stuff. The thing that I think I'm really getting at overall is that covenant theology is such a well-mined, rich area when it comes to Presbyterians. And we get people who come in like your Lighthearts, who are become oatmeal stouts. I think oatmeal stout is a symptom of latent Baptist and other denominational differences kind of showing itself be like, okay, but don't these other groups have a point? And they do. All proper Nicene Christian denominations have some kind of point and something that they do better than the others. But I think that, go ahead.
Isn't this what Michael Foster says about people who believe in paedo communion? That it's just it's latent. It's latent Baptist. I heard them. I don't think that this was recorded, but I heard him on a Twitter or X space talking about how the reason he doesn't believe in paedo communion is Westminsterian reasons, and the people who do believe in paedo communion are just thinking in a Baptist way about what the sacraments have to be.
I think yes, but like I've said, there's a type of paedo communion that I think is legit, and I think that Presbyterians have lost the plot in many cases when it comes to communing young children. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that God is using the latent Baptist thinking to promote younger children receiving his strength at an earlier age. I think that is literally a moving of the Spirit in the church that we can see happening before our very eyes. And you see the fruit of it, but the specifics of and the functions thereof might have a little bit of nuance, but we're moving in a reforming direction, right? And so
okay, so
yeah,
so he's right that that's what it is, but he's wrong that it's a problem, is what you're saying?
it's a problem, but not in the ways he thinks it is.
Okay.
It is God shaking things, and we're feeling the aftershocks. And Michael Foster says, well, if we just stop shaking, we'd be okay. and the real answer is no, God's shaking everything so that what cannot be shaken will remain.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
That's why I don't want to bind the conscience of my high church brothers and that sort of a thing, and on specifically on communion. But when it comes to like baptism and the regeneration thing, like we were talking about, I am not seeing the same fruitful, obvious shaking that could happen from any kind of application of what James Jordan is saying. So you said he doesn't have any application, not really, and that's driving you nuts. But the thing is,
not that I've seen,
not that you can see.
I
right.
still need to work through the paper to see what he's saying is the application of it.
So in reading into it and begging the question, you got to find some application for it. Otherwise, you don't really can't really have a response to it. Not really.
Yeah, exactly.
And so in regard to that, in looking for a application, I can't find one that actually has any merit. So all the theoretical possible applications that I see for that essay don't have any possible fruitful outcome.
Yeah. That's the same thing that I've noticed, is that like, okay, gonna measure my words carefully here, which is going to be difficult because I'm a touch hopped up on nicotine right now. But
like you said, this is all in parentheses, right? This is the sandbox.
Yeah. This is all the sandbox, and I love literally everybody that I have met that is oatmeal stout. I love deeply. Like the pastor, the pastor at the church that I went to down in Texas, seems like just a ridiculously awesome guy. Like really, really cool guy who like deeply cares about this stuff. Like deeply cares about his people, deeply cares about the church in general. So like nothing against any of them whatsoever.
Right.
But the thing that I came to right before I jumped churches from Canadian Valley to the one that I'm currently going to is that the reason I am where I am, like beyond the theology, I'm convinced of the theology, but the reason I am where I am is because of the videos of the Grace Agenda Block Party. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I'm convinced of the theology. Yes, I think it's the most biblical. I'm being brutally honest here. Over and above all of that, over and above the over and above being convinced of the theology of Presbyterianism and paedocommunion and paedobaptism as opposed to Presbyterian polity, the reason I am that is because I want to see city blocks cordoned off with dance parties, godly dance parties. That's what I want to see. Show me the theology that leads to that. Show me the dotted line and I'll sign it. Whatever it is, show me the dotted line that leads to that being a normal part of Christian life, and I'll sign it, because that's what I can tell that that's godly. I feel that that's godly. And whatever leads to that, that's what I want to be. I don't see how the hair splitting over the definition of regeneration leads to more dance parties. Because all that I'm seeing that it does is people being more sectarian. I want to see Baptists involved in these dance parties. I want to see Catholics involved with these dance parties. I want to see Orthodox involved with these dance parties. Mm-hmm. And if their theology doesn't allow for that, then their theology needs to be fixed. But the invitation is open.
Right.
That's what I care about. And before I came to the church that I was at, I was always the person who was most interested in theology in the room. And everybody was like, okay, that's not important. Like, you're getting too often into the weeds. You're getting too high in your you're dealing with questions that don't have any import. And I think that they actually did. I think that they lead to more dance parties. I think that they lead to Grace Agenda. I think that they lead to faithful generations and stone churches 100 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that those are the questions that I was asking lead to those things if you have the right answers. They're not useless. At the church that I'm at, I am nowhere near the most interested in theology. Not even close. I'm not in the top 50% because I've got my theology worked out, and I now want to start building the infrastructure for people to actually live life. And I don't think that the hair splitting is helping.
Right.
Here I stand, I can do no other. That's my thought.
So
basically, I want to have answers to the theological questions. That's why I'm reading through Thoughts on Sovereign Grace and Regeneration. That's why I'm trying to figure out where I stand on this. But in the end, if I land Amber Ale, if I land Oatmeal Stout, if I land somewhere that doesn't have a defined theological position yet, I can't lose. I can't lose the joyful. I can't lose the joyful celebration of community. That's what I can't lose, because that's what that is what I know in my heart God wants.
So you're saying, and this might be a good spot to actually call the recording.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is I was right about there needing to be dancing reintroduced into liturgy.
Yes. However that looks, yes, I want liturgical.
Yeah, we
dancing.
don't know yet, but you're seeing this is leading to that, and that's what we need.
Yes,
we need that joy.
Yeah,
because the joy of the Lord is our strength. I agree.
Exactly.
And so in that regard, I think
right. The joy of the Lord is our strength, and we need theology that leads to joy, not hair splitting.
And joy means dancing and singing.
Yes, it does.
Marshwiggle, still standing strong in a world of doubt. I'll keep marching on. Faith over fiction, hope over fear. Even in darkness, Narnia still here.
This has been Burnt Marshwiggle, hosted by Joshua David Ling and Alexander Robertson. A long-form podcast about metaphysics and swampy stuff. Whenever the heck they want to make one. Here on the Poets at War Creative Network.